Hello, my name is Violeta Baba. I'm part of the selection committee of Vision Rural 2021. I'm very glad to welcome you all, and especially to welcome the filmmakers Lietje Bauwens and Wouter de Raeve to introduce to World Trade Center A Love Story, a film we have selected for Burning Lights competition, which was presented a couple of days ago here in Lyon, and we were lucky we had Lietje here, and now for the online screening and debate, we have both filmmakers with us. Hello, how are you?
Good.
Hello.
I'm a bit tired because yesterday I came back from Vision and it was quite a social experience after being...
Yeah, I can imagine it's a kind of a shock for all of us to be together and to be in a cinema, but again, we were so lucky to have you.
Yeah.
So thanks for coming and thanks for being here. And I will start with a question that has to do with the title, but maybe then it leads us to other topics. Why a love story?
Shall I answer? The title WTC A Love Story, it came up quite intuitively when we started making the film, or actually even before we started really making a film. Almost 2 or 3 years ago, Wouter and I, we had our office in the WTC building, and we saw everything around us changing. We saw architects and urban and designers and social organizations, not social organizations, but organizations putting up participatory trajectories in the Northern Quarter to re-dynamize and redevelop the area. And we were suspicious of what was happening and how it was happening. And then we started saying to everyone that we were making a film about the situation. And we started filming everyone quite randomly because Wouter and I, we've never made a film before. And it started really from a more activist motivation, but also an artistic motivation because we were interested to see what it would do if we would make a film about the situation. And then when we started interviewing all these characters that claimed a voice in the debate, we saw how everyone was projecting their visions onto the tower and onto the Northern Quarter. And so WTC A Love Story, in a way, it's because people are all want something from this tower, like they have this sort of love relationship or obsession with these towers. At the same time, it's also because we saw all these interactions and people working together, architects, private owners, politicians, and it felt like a drama film in a way already. And we thought, what if we intensify the drama, basically? So that's why we also really wanted to have this sort of catchy, dramatic title for the film.
Wouter, do you want to add something?
Yes, in the beginning, it was indeed never our idea to make a real movie, but we were more playing with the narrative of we're gonna make a movie about this. We, for example, in the common elevators of the building, we put up fake casting posters searching for actors, and we really saw in front of us almost this piece of theater of all these personages trying to get a grip on those towers, and what started off as almost a little joke between Liet and me, we're gonna make a movie out of this, kind of started to live its own life until we said, okay, now we're also really gonna do it. And then we started the more production process of finding fundings, etc., etc.
And then also because we started filming everyone and interviewing people, we saw how everyone was talking to the camera and talking to us in a way, really how they wanted to be perceived. The tower is a lot about how the Northern Quarter and the towers and everyone involved want to be perceived. It's inclusive. It's all about sustainability, etc. And when we took these interviews, we thought, what if now we capture how people want to be perceived? What if we accelerate that even further and we give people actors so that they can tell their actors really how they want to be perceived? So
well, this is very interesting because my question was, when did you understand that the dispositive of the film could be this one? And you just explain about that, but I would like to know a little bit more, like how did you understand that this would be the structure of the film? And then going further, taking the feedback of those that are the real players, I would say, and then the feedback both to you and to the actors.
Well, it was always the idea so we were interested in the briefing as an way of interviewing, but also in the fiction as a way of sort of a speculative method to see what the actors would do based on the information they got, but also how they would perhaps take it one step further or go into directions that the real characters normally wouldn't do. And then we were always interested in what would then happen if the real people see themselves on screen, like a critical mirror.
It's sorry to interrupt, but it's a bit of what happens in Hamlet, no? In the Shakespearean experience of Hamlet presenting the play, so that they would react to the events of the killing of the king and.
We never made this comparison or this link, but indeed it's an interesting one.
Yeah. And then, so at first we wanted to just record a fiction show to all the real characters involved. But then during the fiction, we also found that so many characters or real people in the film, and thus their actors, are more there as a facade almost, as a sort of to make the project seem social and inclusive. And in the end, it pretends to be a bottom-up project, but in the end it's just again a top-down project, just as it was in the 70s, and it's again the politicians and the private owners collaborating and deciding for a new future for the Northern Quarter. And that's why we thought, okay, let's just write those other people out of the script. They're there only for they don't really have a say in what's going on, and then we were just left with these three people. And then in the end, as you can see, we wrote in new characters, people who need to be in the cast. And
the aim of using this disposite of the movie is it has several reasons, but one that was at the beginning quite present was also we were very much frustrated about reality. In a way, like you just said, it's always the same thing. It's actually a quite very, it's not a difficult analysis, but it's very depressive. So we were like, maybe if we then add fiction to it, we can also start imagining other futures and other narratives, and also other ways of telling, of storytelling in a way. We are now working on a follow-up of the project where we are even more going into that direction, where we are not so much trying to put this kind of critical mirror to mainly show what's going wrong, but really trying to make use of this methodology with actors and try to push through fiction the reality further, and then hopefully see how then fiction starts to intertwine with reality in real life in Brussels. Liet and I always had this kind of little fantasy of imagining that walking into a bar, but yeah, that's a long time ago, but seeing the actor of a politician talking with, for example, a real figure of a social organization, and then imagining that they would have an interesting conversation about reality, but it's fiction, etc. So yeah.
No, it's interesting because one of the characters says that politicians and other persons in power tend to think for the other. And I think the film somehow tries to create a fiction where we think together. Also the spectators, like we as a community, all the the actors, the players of these involved. And you have a double dispositive, one that has to do with the play role of the actors and the real people, but then there's a format in the screen so that we can follow. How did you arrive to that idea of getting us into this closer screen at certain moments to focus, and the order of having one character always on the right and the one playing the role on the left?
You mean in the briefings?
Yes, in many of the moments in the interviews of one another, and how did you structure formally the film? I'm also curious about how little we see the World Trade Center space, and if this was a difficult decision to have this as a topic, but not really to show, because we can imagine.
Well, it was certainly a difficult decision to make, and we doubted it a long time. But for us, what's happening in a WTC is really a concrete case of what is happening all around. So we wanted to extract it from, or abstract it from its concrete reality to sort of make it an experiment that could take place everywhere almost. And so then only in the end you see the towers, and I think that also somehow builds up you as a viewer, at least that's what I hope, is that somehow you get more and more information about a park and about social housing blocks, and you start to sort of envision it in your head, and then you see it. But about the briefings and the two screens, the split screens, well, as I said, Wouter and I, we had no filmmaking experience, so luckily we got to work with a great crew and a great cameraman, and he thought with us so much about how to do it. So this is all his, thanks to him. But it was mostly what I found interesting about the split screen is that you somehow see fiction and reality and fiction, and you see a real person injecting information into a sort of fictional room. So it's like these two rooms, like a fiction and reality room, and then when the briefing is finished, then this sort of in between space opens up in which the fiction happens. That's what I like about it. But this is not our. We cannot completely take credit for the.
Well, but at the end, it's your decision how to structure.
Yes, but maybe if I can add to the fact that we are no filmmakers, the idea to make a movie about a spatial situation, about spatial practice, we were also very much interested in trying to figure out how to fill in the architectural practice in another way than the common ways that we all know. And throughout our projects, we're very much interested in the force field between the actors involved in spatial development. So we try to figure out with the movie, but also with the next project that is a follow-up of this project, how could spatial practice be, what could spatial practice be through filmmaking, and how can this then have an effect on reality without making one drawing, without making one model, without having any technical or administrative spatial tools in a way, because we kind of strongly have the impression that also the problems that we bump into in a spatial context are also linked to the processes of how space is created. So could we think of alternative languages, alternative ways of dealing with space? This was a very strong motive for us to make a movie.
Yeah, and that and I think also what Mathieu Berger, the sociologist, says at the end of the movie is that how people in power they mostly just want to stay in a context and in a situation that they know. So they want to avoid uncertainty and contingency, and so they operate in their own manners, continuing the status quo. And we also wanted to sort of take them out of their comfort zone and put them into our context, and thereby placing them in an uncertain place. And because we're also interested in what could it do to inject more uncertainty and to acknowledge more uncertainty when in such spatial processes, because what we see what's going wrong so often is just these visions that are implemented and are decided on beforehand. And
yeah, well, definitely that's a very meaningful speech and has a lot of weight at the end of the film, especially talking about they don't want to show themselves vulnerable, as we all are, and so then we will stay like this, as you say, like keeping the status quo. I thought it was very, very relevant to have that. And the film for sure presents this problem of the space, but also the one of the participation and the representation. And you managed to put together these all levels and aspects. And I was wondering if there was a challenging aspect in the process when inviting real people or in the representation, because the feedback, or we see the real players laughing and having fun, because it's in a way you put it as something that can be playful and we can learn and we can. But I was wondering if there were some difficulties or not so easy moments in the process of having this mirror.
You mean in with the people in the first part of the film?
Yes, or afterwards, the reactions, or
No,
actually you told me, Lietje, that this was shown, and it is at the end of the film that this was there was a screening for. So if you had any difficulties, because so far it seems like the film has a great effect, and also it's a good process in let's say healthy terms as a community. But there were challenges or difficult situations as well, or reactions?
I mean, it was very hard to get the people in power involved in the beginning. That took us a very long time. Because as you said, they don't want to be vulnerable. Well, we make them quite vulnerable by putting them in front of an actor in our artist studio. This is something that they're not used to. So that took us a long time. I think a difficulty perhaps was that in the beginning, we succeeded in making them part of it, because we said we will also brief an actor. We're all on the same page. But then, of course, slowly in the film, you also see that Wouter and I, we're not objective. We also do have an opinion, quite a strong opinion about what's going on. So you see more and more in the film that we speak up about what we think about what's going on. And I think at some point for the people in power, they might have felt a bit trapped. But this was also our way of, like a strategy of getting them involved. Otherwise, if we would have from the beginning on stated our opinions as activists and being very critical, there would have never been a conversation. And what we wanted was to see how we could have this conversation. And perhaps we were not 100% transparent all the time, but it was it was necessary to get there. But this was a bit of a difficulty perhaps at the end.
But it's something that we find also quite interesting in general in our practice to kind of think what we do with our own position within this force field, because we are middle class artists, educated. If we want to, we can be part of whatever process, and we have quite an easy access to all those people in power. So what you do with that privilege, and what you do with that, what you do with that, and you can use it for your own benefit. You can use it for other means. You can try to link it to the notion of leverage, yeah. So for us, it's also a bit of a continuous search how to position ourselves in that force field.
Yeah.
But at the same time, we're also very thankful, or maybe not thankful, but the fact that those in power then participate in the movie also shows some kind of interest in being self-critical, which is also something we respect a lot and we value a lot. But some people then say it's maybe not that they are willing to be self-critical, but they just look at you as some artists, and what could be harmful about this will just go along their little funny project, and who cares?
But that was really in the beginning how we felt that they were looking at us. But then when the film started getting quite some attention, and also in the national media of Belgium, we really put a spotlight on what was going on in Northern Quarter with this film. And then we also saw how their opinion towards us started shifting a bit, because all of a sudden we were not completely innocent anymore. But it has been very interesting to also see. So they all came to the premiere. And they all Twittered and shared the event when it came out, or the premiere, the event in Brussels. And then it was very interesting to see how they all started behaving towards the project, because of course when you get critiqued, you need to well, what we saw is that they started just naturalizing it basically by claiming it and claiming the critique. And claiming the film as if it was also theirs. So, for example, the owner of the building, Beffimo, they make a magazine once in a while, and then on the cover it was put Zin, which is the name of the new project. Zin, a new love story. So everyone started to sort of they also wanted a part of this film, which was about the tower. So that was funny to see.
It's amazing, the process of reappropriation, even of something
exactly.
that initially was critical to what they were doing. But this is how, I don't know, how capitalism operates in general. So
exactly.
And I think it's very smart what you did in terms of the training of the real character to the actor. Gives a lot of information to the actor, but also to the spectator, because there are many specificities that it's otherwise would be difficult to follow and to understand about, well, the problematic. This one that resonates with others, as you, Wouter, mentioned, but yet we have to discuss something concrete. And when watching it, we can also follow and understand and go deeper into the problems and the complexity and the particularity of this. And I was wondering if now that you have completed the film and you have another project, and the new project is in the magazine, if there's a space for real hope, or how is that?
What do you mean with real hope? To steer the direction of the quartier in a different way, or?
Yes.
But we get the question quite often. Isn't it all decided yet? Isn't it too late? And these kind of things. But maybe in a from a pure activist approach, it's actually never too late, because the last thing you can do is go on the street and burn cars, actually. There's
always that.
There's always something you can do. And so, for example, now the towers are being constructed. In 2 years, the apartments will be finished. But, sorry, who knows, maybe if activism continues in Brussels and our project is finished, they will never be able to sell those apartments. and then the building is empty again, and then maybe people will squat it, or so. I think it's always possible to change, to redirect reality. And the funny thing is, of course, the buildings as such are very much an example of that. They were constructed in the 70s, and not even 30 years later, they're totally empty. So the project already was a failure. And then there were not even activists involved. It was just economy and society as such that delivered this failure, actually.
But for hope, I don't know if I have hope, but at least the series is much more motivated by hope. And we are not criticizing what's going wrong, but together with the last characters of that you see in the film, the social organizations from the Northern Quarter, the series is really in function of organizing them, seeing how they could overcome their differences and how they can really claim a voice in the debate, and how we can set up an alternative participatory trajectory with them. And the hope we have is that, again, we have politicians involved, and that's where we use our own status, our own sort of elitist capital to connect these two worlds. And this time the mayor of Brussels will even be involved. So I think in that sense, because we got so much attention with this film, it's not, there's not really a way anymore to ignore it in Brussels. So that gives me hope.
Well, for us, at least, it's also very hopeful to hear this and to have your work as a way of thinking about this problematic and to be aware, to open our eyes. So we want to thank you very, very much. Really give us some hope, and good luck with the next project. We will be looking forward to watching it and hopefully to having it in Neon, and welcoming you next time both here. So thanks a lot.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Bye-bye.
Bye.